Welcome back to Fusty Stories. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and get ready for another story you won't forget. Let's dive back to the story. Jennifer Tyler was not just known for her wealth, she was known for her grace. Born into privilege but shaped by hard work, she ran Tyler Innovations, a global design company that revolutionized sustainable architecture. Her beauty radiated with quiet confidence, tall, dark-skinned with soft curls and eyes that held warmth. Despite her empire, she lived humbly, spending evenings sketching blueprints or volunteering at orphanages. But wealth didn't protect her from loneliness. Her parents had died in an accident when she was 20, leaving her with fortune and silence. She longed for love that wasn't about her money, love that saw her. It was at a business charity gala in London that she met Kingsley Reid, a charming, ambitious man with disarming wit and a gentle British accent that felt like music. He worked as a financial analyst, modest in lifestyle, refined in taste, and unlike others, seemed uninterested in her status. He listened when she spoke. He laughed at her jokes. He made her feel human again, not just a billionaire. To her, he was sincerity wrapped in charm. What she didn't know was that behind that calm gaze, Kingsley was already calculating more than love. He was studying opportunity. Kingsley Reid grew up in the gray corners of Manchester, a world away from luxury. His childhood was painted with struggle, an ill mother, a distant father, and debts that never ended. He was clever, educated, and driven, but bitterness had seeded in him early. He swore to never be poor again. When he met Jennifer, she was everything his world had denied him: elegance, security, admiration. To her, he played the role of the man of integrity. To himself, she was the key to freedom. Still, there were nights when guilt whispered, asking if he truly loved her. And sometimes he wasn't sure. Jennifer fell deeper each day. Kingsley made breakfast in bed, sent handwritten notes, and spent hours listening to her dreams. He made her believe she had found her missing piece. When he proposed on a candle-lit yacht beneath the Italian stars, she said yes with tears in her eyes. The media celebrated their marriage as the union of love and power. But behind closed doors, Kingsley began planting roots of control, slowly taking over her finances to protect her interests. Jennifer, blinded by love, handed him the keys without hesitation. Before the marriage, Kingsley had already met Anita Patrick, a former banker turned social climber. She was striking, dark, fierce, intelligent, and dangerous in her ambition. They met at an investors' conference where he had confessed his dreams of escaping mediocrity. Anita had seen through his charm and recognized his hunger. Together, they built an alliance, not of love, but of greed. She promised to help him climb. He promised to bring her along once the fortune came. Their plan took shape when Jennifer entered the picture. Anita would stay in the shadows, feeding Kingsley advice and contacts. While Jennifer planned their honeymoon, Anita was calculating their next move. She rented a small apartment under a fake name in London where she and Kingsley met in secret. They studied Jennifer's businesses, her accounts, her legal vulnerabilities. Every compliment Kingsley gave his wife was another data point for their deception. Just 1 year, Anita would whisper, "Then we vanish rich." Kingsley would kiss her hand and smile, torn between guilt and lust. Love had turned into a game, and Jennifer was a prize. Jennifer's first year of marriage was blissful on the surface, but lonely underneath. Kingsley became distant, often claiming to travel for business. When she called, he sounded rushed. When she visited his office unannounced, he wasn't there. She convinced herself it was normal. Every successful man was busy. But deep down, she felt a shift. Her home grew quiet, her laughter less frequent. She filled the void with charity projects, traveling to orphanages across Europe, trying to remind herself of purpose beyond love. One night, during a Paris event, Jennifer caught Kingsley whispering into his phone, his tone sharp, impatient. Not the gentle man she knew. When she asked who it was, he smiled. Just business. But his eyes betrayed a flicker of panic. Anita, meanwhile, grew restless. She wanted results. "You're getting soft," she accused him one evening. "Don't forget why we started this." Kingsley's face hardened. "I'll finish what we began. She'll never see it coming." His words cut through the night like glass. Somewhere in the city, Jennifer dreamed of him, unaware she was already losing everything. Months later, Jennifer's world collapsed overnight. Kingsley left for a supposed conference in Geneva, but never returned. 2 days later, Police contacted her. His car had been found near a riverbank. Inside, his wallet, watch, and wedding ring. No body. They declared him missing. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Eventually, the media labeled it a tragic accident. Jennifer refused to believe it, searching every corner of Europe, hiring private investigators, and praying every night he would walk through the door. Her empire began to crumble under the weight of grief. She barely noticed when her accounts started draining. Kingsley, under a new name, had already transferred her fortune across offshore accounts. Anita had vanished too. Alone in her mansion, Jennifer clutched his photographs, whispering, "You promised you'd never leave." She buried an empty coffin, surrounded by cameras and tears, unaware that somewhere in Spain, Kingsley and Anita toasted champagne to their new life. A year passed. Jennifer's name was still respected, but the woman behind it was broken. She had lost millions, yet wealth was the least of her pain. What hurt most was betrayal. Her faith and love had been stolen. She became reclusive, shutting the world out. Even her best friend, Caroline Moore, a marketing director with a fiery personality, struggled to reach her. "Jen, you can't keep living like this," Caroline pleaded one morning. Jennifer sighed. How do you rebuild when the person you trusted most burned you down? To escape her memories, Jennifer moved to Bordeaux, France, a quieter place, away from tabloids. She spent her mornings painting landscapes and her evenings walking by the river. Her therapist, Dr. Victor Lang, a kind, gray-haired man, helped her heal one conversation at a time. "Closure doesn't come from answers," he said gently. "It comes from peace." But closure seemed like a myth. Every shadow reminded her of Kingsley. Every song felt like him whispering her name. Still, she tried to breathe again, unaware fate was preparing a cruel revelation. It was a warm spring afternoon when Jennifer decided to visit the Bordeaux Galleria Mall for the first time in months. The place buzzed with laughter, music, and life. She wandered to the crowd, her dark curls bouncing freely, her heart finally light. She stopped by a jewelry store, admiring a necklace that reminded her of her wedding day. That's when she saw him. At first, she froze. Her breath caught. Across the glass reflection, a man stood with his arm around a woman and a little boy. The child's laughter echoed. The man turned slightly, and Jennifer's world shattered. It was Kingsley. The same posture, the same voice, the same scar on his wrist. For a moment, she thought she was hallucinating. But no, it was real. The woman beside him, Anita Patrick. The boy, no more than 5. Her chest tightened. "Tamal spoon." She stepped back into the shadows, trembling. They didn't see her. She walked out silently, eyes cold, heart pounding. Kingsley Reed was alive and living a new life built on her ruin. Jennifer didn't go home that night. She checked into a private suite at Hotel de Lumiere, her mind spiraling between rage and disbelief. The next morning, she called Caroline. "He's alive." Caroline dropped her coffee. "What?" Jennifer's voice was steady. "Kingsley, with a woman and child. I saw them." Caroline's disbelief turned to fury. "We'll find him." Jennifer hired a private investigator, Ethan Cole, a former intelligence officer known for his precision and loyalty. Within days, Ethan uncovered shocking details. Kingsley was living under the alias Daniel Clark, managing a small tech firm funded through offshore accounts. Anita went by Mrs. Clark. They lived in a gated community outside the city. The child's name was Liam. Ethan's voice was low when he gave the report. "He transferred your funds through shell companies. They built their lives on your fortune." Jennifer stared at the window, silent. "Find proof," she said coldly. "Everything." It wasn't grief anymore. It was justice forming in the shape of vengeance. Jennifer spent the next weeks planning. Revenge wasn't impulse. It was strategy. She contacted Inspector Elise Marchand, a brilliant officer who had once investigated corporate frauds. Jennifer handed her every record, every transaction Ethan uncovered. Elise leaned back, impressed. This is enough to reopen the case of his death and charge him for fraud and identity manipulation. But Jennifer wasn't satisfied with an arrest alone. She wanted him to see her, to know the empire he thought he destroyed still stood taller. She quietly purchased a neighboring villa to Kingsley's new house under a new identity, Madame Ariel Leclerc, a French investor. With Caroline's help, she billed her cover perfectly. One evening, Standing by the window, she saw Kingsley walk by with Anita, smiling, carrying groceries. Her hands trembled, but she whispered, "Not yet. You'll pay in my time." It was a golden evening when fate collided with vengeance. Jennifer walked into a nearby cafe, calm, poised, hidden behind dark sunglasses. Kingsley entered moments later, alone. Their eyes met across the room. He froze, pale as death. For a second, he thought he was seeing a ghost. Jennifer smiled faintly. "Hello, Kingsley. Or should I say, Daniel Clark." He stuttered, voice breaking. "Jennifer, Save it," she interrupted. "You faked your death, stole everything I built, and built your paradise on lies." The cafe went silent. He tried to speak again, but her gaze cut through him like a blade. "You'll wish you stayed dead," she whispered, then turned and walked out, leaving him trembling, terrified, and fully aware that the past he buried had risen from the grave. Outside, Inspector Elise watched from her car. She lifted her phone. "We move tonight." Jennifer's heart burned with resolve. The hunt was over. The justice was about to begin. That night, rain lashed against Bordeaux streets as police cruisers surrounded Kingsley's villa. Inside, he and Anita were celebrating Liam's birthday, unaware of the approaching storm. Blue lights flashed across their living room curtains. When the door burst open, Inspector Elise Marchand stepped in, her badge gleaming. "Kingsley Reed, you're under arrest for fraud, identity falsification, and grand theft." Anita screamed, clutching the child. Kingsley's glass shattered on the floor. He turned toward the window and froze. Across the road, through the blur of rain, Jennifer stood watching, expression calm and unblinking. Kingsley lunged forward, shouting denials, but Elise's team pinned him down. "You were dead," she said coldly, "until your victim walked into them all." As handcuffs clicked shut, Jennifer's lips trembled, not with fear, but release. The man who once kissed her forehead now begged for mercy. "Jen, please," he cried. She whispered back, "You buried me once. It's my turn to resurrect the truth." The sirens carried him away into the night. By dawn, the world exploded with headlines. "Billionaire widow finds dead husband alive, arrested with mistress." Reporters camped outside Jennifer's estate. Paparazzi helicopters circled overhead. Every news channel replayed the footage of Kingsley being dragged into custody. Journalists dissected how he'd forged documents, staged the crash, and siphoned millions. Public sympathy poured toward Jennifer, though she stayed silent. Caroline became her shield, handling press statements and shutting down invasive reporters. Meanwhile, Anita's face appeared on tabloids too, labeled the mastermind lover. She was held separately, denying everything, but evidence piled up: shared accounts, fake passports, offshore transfers. Even their lawyer abandoned them halfway through the interrogation. Jennifer watched it all from her study, exhausted but vindicated. For the first time, she slept without nightmares. The courtroom overflowed with cameras and curiosity. Kingsley entered in cuffs, pale, thinner, stripped of charm. Anita followed, eyes blazing with defiance. Jennifer arrived last, regal in black, not as a victim, but as power reborn. Her testimony was poised, factual, cutting. "I entrusted him with everything," she said steadily. "My love, my trust, my company. He repaid me with lies." The prosecutor unveiled transfers, secret property deeds, falsified death reports. When the footage from the mall played on the screen, Kingsley laughing with Anita and Liam, a gasp rippled through the hall. Kingsley buried his face in his hands. Anita glared at him, their alliance fractured. "You promised me freedom," she hissed under her breath. He whispered back, "You promised silence." By the end of the session, the judge adjourned with heavy words. "The evidence is overwhelming." Jennifer stepped outside to flashes of cameras, the wind tangling her hair. For once, she didn't hide. Justice had begun to speak. Locked in a gray interrogation room, Kingsley finally broke. Days without sleep and endless questioning stripped away his arrogance. "Yes," he confessed hoarsely, "I faked it. I couldn't stand living under her shadow. She had everything, and I had nothing." His voice cracked. "Anita said she'd help me start fresh. I thought we could build our own empire." Inspector Elise listened silently, recording every word. "And the money? Gone," he muttered. "Invested, spent, wasted." Tears welled in his eyes. I did love her once, but greed. It eats you alive. Across town, Anita refused to speak until her lawyer presented the confession transcript. Her face drained of color. He blamed me, she snapped. He was the planner. But deep down, she knew the walls were closing in. Her ambition had devoured her. In her cell that night, she whispered, maybe he loved her after all. While the adults drowned in scandal, one innocent life trembled in the middle: Liam Reed, Kingsley and Anita's 5-year-old son. Child services placed him temporarily under social care until relatives could be found. When Jennifer learned this, she surprised everyone. He's not guilty of his parents' sins, she said softly. With court approval, she arranged safe accommodation and funded his welfare anonymously. One afternoon, she visited the children's center disguised under a cap. Liam sat drawing quietly, a small boy with his father's eyes. When he smiled at her, her heart broke. Do you like painting? She asked. He nodded. My dad used to paint stars with me. Jennifer blinked back tears. Keep painting, Liam. Never stop seeing light, even when people give you darkness. She left before he could ask her name, feeling a strange peace. Weeks later, the verdict came. The judge's voice echoed to the packed court. Kingsley Reed and Anita Patrick are hereby sentenced to 15 years imprisonment for fraud, conspiracy, and identity falsification. Gasps filled the air. Kingsley closed his eyes. Anita sobbed uncontrollably. Jennifer exhaled slowly. It was over. Reporters begged for her reaction, but she simply said, justice isn't revenge, it's restoration. Her poise mesmerized the world. Business magazines later called her the Phoenix billionaire. Back home, she gathered her staff and said, we rebuild, stronger, cleaner, wiser. Every employee stood and applauded. For the first time in years, the mansion felt alive again. Jennifer poured herself into new beginnings. She launched the Tyler Foundation for Women and Children, helping victims of financial abuse regain independence. Caroline became its executive director, and Ethan Cole joined as security head. Together they traveled through Europe, building partnerships. Every speech Jennifer gave inspired thousands. Late one evening, standing at her office balcony, she looked over the city lights. For so long, I was defined by what I lost, she murmured. Now I'm defined by what I give. Dr. Victor Lang visited occasionally, proud of her progress. You've turned pain into purpose, he told her. She smiled faintly. It's the only revenge worth taking. Months into his sentence, Kingsley began sending letters. The first started with apologies, the next with regret. Jennifer never replied, but read each one. He wrote about loneliness, about missing his son, about realizing too late that love was worth more than ambition. You were my miracle, Jen. One letter said, I destroyed it because I didn't believe I deserved you. Anita wrote too, begging forgiveness, claiming she'd been blinded by greed. Jennifer forwarded her letter to the prosecutor and moved on. Still, sometimes at night, she'd stare at the stack of envelopes and wonder how two people who once swore forever could become strangers with pens and guilt. Then she'd turn off the light and remind herself survival was her closure. A year later, Jennifer visited Bordeaux prison for a charity outreach program. Fate, in its irony, placed Kingsley on the work team painting the visitor hall. Their eyes met across the room. No hate, only silence. You look different, he whispered as she passed. So do you, she replied quietly. He smiled sadly. You won. She paused. No, Kingsley. I healed. That evening, she walked by the same mall where she had once found him alive. This time, she stopped at the jewelry store, bought the necklace she once admired, and wore it with pride. The reflection staring back was no longer the grieving widow. It was a woman reborn. 2 years later, on the anniversary of the trial, Jennifer hosted a grand charity gala titled New Beginnings. The ballroom glittered with lights, filled with survivors, philanthropists, and children she had helped. She gave a heartfelt speech. Sometimes destiny breaks us to rebuild us stronger. Pain is temporary. Purpose is forever. The crowd rose in applause. Caroline hugged her tightly. Ethan handed her a glass of champagne. To new chapters, he said. Jennifer smiled. To new beginnings. As music filled the hall, she looked toward the stars through the glass ceiling. The same star she once watched with Kingsley on that Italian yacht. But this time, there was no sorrow, only peace. The woman who lost everything had found herself. And somewhere deep inside, she whispered to her past, "Thank you for ending, so I could begin." That's all for today. Like, subscribe, and see you in the next episode. Stay tuned.